Sometimes it's as honest as having like someone else hold that mirror up for you. And then once you realize, okay, I'm unhappy, that's when you can start making a pivot to change that. Even for me, when I started the process of analyzing, well, what do I actually want to do? That pressure on my chest started to lift because I was taking control back of my journey.
Welcome to the People and Legal podcast. This is the Law and Beyond show where we explore everything in this expanding legal universe that is law, technology, education and compliance, and academia. And I am your host, Chantal McNaught. I'm a PhD researcher researching how lawyers can navigate the conflicts between law as a profession and law as a business. I also author the fully innovative luxury lawyer newsletter that you can find on LinkedIn. And today I have with us the TechnoCat, Kat Casey. She's a global voice in AI and legal innovation, and for nearly 2 decades, Kat has operated at the crossroads of AI, forensics, and high-stakes legal work. Kat has pivoted a few times now and is providing what she calls Fractional Sparkle, which is converting her proven track record of fixing brand story to turn companies into unicorns. All whilst she maintains flexibility to chase her chosen catnip. For this special careers edition of the Law and Beyond show, brought to you by Novum Global, Kat and I are talking all things legal tech and career pivots with some exciting announcements on the way. Thank you so much for joining me on the show, Kat.
Thank you so much. I was joking that trying to schedule this was like trying to herd a cat on catnip and then some, but you were patient, and I think timing and all the stars aligned to make a really awesome show with perfect timing for some super secret updates.
Yes, that is what we are going to get into. What is special about this episode as well with the TechnoCat is that we have not pre-prepared these questions, because Kat's magic works best when we bring up some surprises and a lovely journey along the way. So I want to ask you first off to look back on your early days in legal work and how you have come to understand what law as a profession is, and when you realize that it is also very much law as a business.
I love that. So I decided when I was 12, like most people do, that I'm great at math and science and I'm really good at words. And if I go the science route, I have to be a doctor. And if I mess up, someone might die. But if I'm good with words and go the route of law, I can always appeal. So at 12, I decided, okay, I'm going to go the route of law. And then I made it all the way through, finished undergrad early, right into law school, and pretty quickly realized, while I love law, it wasn't quite scratching the itch in terms of how I wanted to interact with people. I found pretty quickly, pretty early in my career, that my superpower, my secret sauce, was being a translator. I studied existential philosophy, and suddenly I'm the leading voice of AI. So I should be a barista, and yet I'm on stages giving keynotes about AI. Who knew, right? And I think what I realized pretty early on is legal is a business, but it's also a fiefdom. It's all these individual people who were the rock stars that, maybe they finished undergrad early, maybe they got right into these areas of expertise. They're rainmakers, they're brilliant, and they're a little uncomfortable when it comes to technology. So in this business, when you're trying to create a strategic advantage, when all this technology is coming in, I realized I had a superpower to help lawyers and legal technologists navigate what 20 years ago wasn't as big of a shift, but what we're seeing today is a very big shift, and figure out how to position themselves, how to effectively use technology, and how to become kind of those tech-enabled rock stars. I call it becoming Iron Man Esquire.
That what I love so much about hearing that is not only like at 12 you had worked out what it is that you wanted to do, but also you allowed yourself to follow what interests you. And I think that's what it can be so difficult for people who are pursuing a career, particularly one as demanding as law, as it can be easy to go, oh, well, this is meant to be hard. I'm not enjoying this. To hear that you had studied existential philosophy, which is not easy. I've had to do a little bit of philosophy in the PhD, and I tell you what, I've had to lay on the floor a few times. Like, what is? And value pluralist, by the way. So
I love it. I love it.
Because,
Well,
it's it's all pluralism.
of course, of course. No, it's funny. I think in particular today, it's really easy to kind of fall into that sunk cost fallacy, right? As a lawyer, as a legal professional, maybe you've got 10 years of practice. Well, 10 years plus 3 years in law school, plus 4 years in undergrad, plus as far back as that goes. So you've got decades invested in probably not STEM, right? And so it can feel a little scary like, hey, this isn't what I put all my effort into. Am I going to fail? Oh no, do I need to, run for the hills? And the cool thing to me is in the last 3 years, with the way we've kind of made the shift from AI and tech being the domain of the dorks in a good way, the people that understand the relational databases, to being very consumer grade, meaning someone who has a mastery of words and language suddenly has a leg up. I think for a lot of legal professionals, there's a realization of, hey, I'm not just going to make it through this transition, but I'm uniquely positioned to dominate and to really be at the tip of the spear and lead. And so that's why I'm so excited about some of the stuff I'm doing, because I think there's a misconception that lawyers have about not being equipped, not being prepared, being caught flat footed in the age of AI. And the opposite is true. And that's why I say I studied existential philosophy, you studied philosophy. Our language and our philosophy is actually making us AI superstars.
Yeah, and it's I think for those that might not have that level of interest, though, I think this is a really great sign, though, to follow those sorts of interests, because you don't know what will become the next superpower. And it's not necessarily that the stuff now is going to be important in the future. And so like that's what's really cool about hearing what you're saying. I want to drill down though more about, like, because clearly you do have an affinity with numbers, which is quite rare for people who do end up studying law. How did you get onto the forensics side of things?
So I had a leg up because my grandfather helped create virtual memory. And so because of that, he's brilliant. He was part of the 128 corridor, which for those of us old enough to know, that was before Silicon Valley where all the tech was happening. And so because of that, much like a lot of the other tech founders, I had access. I had a laptop when I was like 12. I had computers, I had people talking about tech. And so for me, it was never a I'm gonna go do tech. It's of course I'm using tools in tech. It's
It
just
was
what
in your
you
DNA.
do, right? And so but not having that fear of this is something new and different, and it was something I mean, I was probably playing with old, Apple IIs when I was like 3, 4, 5. And so because it wasn't scary and unfamiliar, of course I wanna get into forensics. Of course I wanna understand the data. Of course I wanna take my legal way of thinking and analyzing, but also use all the tools that are out there. It was just sort of, I don't know, inevitable.
Yes, but that I think is the magic, when people think, just going back to how, we're talking about career pivots, and we will get to your announcements as well, which I'm excited about, is that whole like inevitability concept, that it's you do you do have to feel a sense of tension. The Stoics talk about the obstacle is the way, but you will get that sense of feeling this is what I'm meant to do, compared to something like bashing your head against the wall. And because, like, I know when I was in practice, I felt it. I was like, oh, is this all there is, that I only just manage my files for ages, and then eventually I'll buy equity in the firm, but I don't know how to run a firm. I just know how to run my files. So that was where my curiosity sparked. And it turns out, just like you, Kat, I actually have a family of entrepreneurs. I'm the third of my
Yeah,
mother's children to start a business. So
I love
so it does, like, I feel as if your story reinforces just how much it is about finding what is inevitable for you, and not resisting that just to fit into a particular box that society expects of you. And I want to.
things, what's inevitable changes too. I think we talked a little bit
Yeah.
about that. Like sometimes you reach for the brass ring, you get it, you look around, you're like, well, nowhere else to go, and I don't like where I am. Now what?
Yeah, true. And so what do you do then? Was there a time in your career where that happened?
100%. So I had the pleasure of running the global tech program for a tiny firm known as Gibson Dunn. I think they were the number one litigation firm in the world. So that was my first at a law firm job. I'm running 25 offices, everything from Theranos to the jewel, like you name the litigation, I'm involved in it. And I got there and I'm like, wow, there's nowhere bigger and better to go if I'm in discovery, if I'm doing legal technology. And while I love my team and I love the cases I'm on, I don't really love the administrative balancing act or being staff in a firm where my book of business was $90 million, but the first year associate was going to get a little more clout than I did. And so I had to do a pretty candid self-assessment of what am I good at that I like? What am I good at that I don't like? What am I not good at that I am interested in? What am I not good at that I'm not interested in? And then from that, I created my own role. That's how I became a chief innovation officer, started traveling the world speaking and writing because I realized one of the things I missed was it wasn't just the administrative lift. It was I couldn't really go out there and have my own authentic voice because of the risk of being associated with a firm. And
Yeah.
so being honest with myself, normally you're like, oh, social media, I don't really care that much. I did. I did care that much. I missed my tribe. I missed talking to people. And so, I had that top role. I had the role everyone kind of covets and wants. And I realized, me, the unique molecules and nuances and neuroses that make up TechnoCat, wasn't happy and it wasn't the best use of me. So I built a custom role and I trial and error. It wasn't perfect at the first company I did it with. The next one, I was like, all right, well, I don't want to have this piece. I do want to have this piece. It was an even better opportunity. So I made one unicorn, then made another. And then once we kind of reached that spot with Reveal, I was like, all right, well, what do I want to do now? And that's what opened this next chapter. So it's,
Yes. And let's get into the next chapter because I'm super keen to hear more about what the TechnoCat is up to in 2026. This episode is recorded at the beginning of the year, so we're talking about looking at the future. But by the time you hear it, some things will
yeah.
reach your feeds. So let's go. Give it to us.
Well, shameless plug. I have in my hand, AI and Legal Tech, my first published by Wiley Big Girl book. So I've been in 4 other books. I've contributed to great content, but there's something different about a year of work being in your hand on Amazon and ready for people to go. And from this, I kind of came up with this idea of 69 million white collar jobs are about to be disrupted. And for the first time ever, who's the tip of the disruption? We are legal, right? And because we haven't gone through this disruption before, there's not this whole cohort of resources and places to upskill. There's not a whole lot for the people who are about to be displaced. And so I think 2 days after I announced I was starting TechnoCat, which is kind of, brand evangelism, finding that story, amplifying it, and bringing my decades of experience, I actually got reached out to by a conference series called The Masters that was rebranding from being legal tech and discovery focused to the hub for humans in the age of AI for legal humans. And so what we're doing is we're launching first conference is going to be on March 6th, but a 10-city sprint, all focused on AI, all hyper interactive, no more panels, no more stage on the stage being bored. It's hyper interactive for all the people who are like, okay, AI is inevitable. Now what? How do I, as a legal person, pivot? How do I learn the right stuff? How do I learn and certify to future careers? How do I find those future careers? How do I upskill? And so I'm really excited because it kind of weaves my passion together, which has always been helping people navigate change that's a little daunting at the intersection of law and technology. And frankly, it's never been more daunting than now. So why not make it formal? So I'm really, really excited about that. The announcement will probably have already come out, but we're going to have a second show that's in Chicago in mid-April and just keep the rolling thunder, trying to bring community, digital ecosystem, in-person ecosystem, and even upskilling and outplacement for people who are like, okay, AI is happening. What do I do now?
Fantastic. And I think the words that you used before we pressed record was the humans of AI. And I think that is like super, like I just, it resonates so much because it is really easy to get caught up in the hype. LinkedIn is quite I think I saw a meme that was like linked out. Like I'm just because it's so like it's great. It's actually a single source of my legal tech news, and it's very beneficial. But there is that sort of sense of fear, and this is an inoculation. It's part of the curiosity that can help with the uncertainty that we're all experiencing when it comes to this hyper disruptive technology. And I'm so
Yeah,
excited to hear that the TechnoCat is leading that, because
it
it
is. It is.
requires a different version of what legal looks like.
Well, and I think it's everyone's trying to get on the hype train. They're not building for AI, for the humans that are feeling this disruption. I don't want to just tag an AI to the name of the company. I don't want to just get some extra eyeballs on it. I want something that actually works for the types of challenges legal humans are facing today. Where if you're going to have a day you're not billing, it's useful, right? Or throughout the year, you've got these digital assets or a community where you're not going it alone, because I think all of us feel like, oh my God, everything's changed. I'm behind the 8 ball. And frankly, we're all building the plane at the same time. No one's behind unless you decide to play ostrich for 2 or 3 more years, where we're all kind of at a good point today. So
Yeah, you either join the conversation or not, and it's more fun, I think, to have that conversation and learn that, yeah, we are all like learning this as we go. No one has it all figured out. That's a total fallacy. I think this whole AI talk, though, I really want to know some of your stories and what you might have seen as examples of bad AI in legal. Systems that were, oversold, misused, poorly governed, and what were the potential consequences of those that you can share, obviously.
I mean, I think for me, the biggest error organizations make is pretending people aren't going to use it. Shadow IT is a real thing, and shadow AI is even more of a thing. So just saying we don't do AI is not going to prevent people from using it. What companies need to do is have internal guardrails, internal policy, and training. Otherwise, you'll have cases like the Avianca case where this poor attorney watched 2 YouTube videos, then decided to use generative AI to figure out case citations, got caught when they were hallucinated or incorrect, and then had generative AI check his work again. And generative AI said, oh, they weren't hallucinated, to which the poor Avianca attorney got pretty badly sanctioned. And it's not just him, there have been hundreds of cases like this. And it's what I try to remind people is it's not bad AI. Generative AI by nature is creative, but it's using it maybe in the wrong way, or not using something that's custom built for the unique challenges that legal has. Another bad AI, which again I think is probably more user error, was I think it was a coder at one of the big tech companies, I won't name drop, was doing coding for something that they had pretty good IP protection on, right? And unfortunately, by inputting it into ChatGPT, or maybe it was Llama, I don't remember which application they were doing, but it was bidirectionally training. The next person who asked a similar question got that protected IP code, and it vitiated any of the IP protections because you screamed it in the public square. And I think the other thing is really, which I've seen a fair amount of, we kind of have re-evolved the hype curve, if you will. Like normally you go at that peak of heightened, enlightened kind of expectations, trough of disillusionment, and then to kind of productive. We've jumped right in and kind of stayed at that heightened expectations level, which means more and more people are doing AI pilots thinking Gen AI can do everything. And so there's a misalignment of expectations with the reality of what some tools can do, and throwing the baby out with the bathwater. There's some great machine learning tech that is super powerful that maybe a Gen AI search or a different Gen AI application just it's not quite as good or not better. And so it's not even a huge whoopsie. It's more of a you're reinventing the wheel, but the wheel's not as round and you're not going as fast.
Yeah, I think that is probably the most common one, at least that I have seen in this part of the world, Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific, where it really is this taking something like, your library of precedents and
Mm-hmm.
going, no, I'm not going to use years
Exactly.
of IP and knowledge work that the firm is using. I'm going to just draft from scratch with AI, which is very good at drafting things, but
Yeah.
is that the right task for the AI to be achieving? Is it going to be materially beneficial in that circumstance? Often that hasn't been the case, and then of course those legal teams have gone, oh well, AI isn't worth it. We're not going
Of
to
course.
invest
Yeah.
any more time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it does become something that requires discernment. But that's why I'm really excited to hear about the course series and your your sprints across, did you say 10 cities?
cities, and we're
Oh,
planning to do international next year. So, but yeah, we're going to be starting off in Charlotte. Then we're going mainly stateside for now, but I believe I'm hoping for either Sydney or New Zealand next year. Probably somewhere like Toronto in North America, and then somewhere in EMEA because this is not a uniquely American challenge.
no, not at all. And that whole learning and iterative process as well. But I was just it's just super impressed that 10 is a lot. Like I had to do 3 when, launching a new product in New Zealand, and I was already exhausted. So 10 is just like, ugh, wow. That's a lot of coffee. So, I do want to leave our listeners to something a little bit, uh, productive for them to have taken away from this podcast. We do have this on YouTube as well. So, potentially that could be a bit of a CPD. I'm not sure. It depends on your jurisdiction. But do you have off the top of your head a simple checklist for, evaluating? You said that lawyers need to start with some firm guidelines. And so I know that like a lot of firms struggle with the whole, what do we put in the AI policy? If we're not outright banning stuff, what do we do? How do we give permissions that provide, structuring and guardrails to make it somewhat safe for professional ethics?
I think it starts, and don't hate me for saying it, but it starts with talking with your IT, your CISO, your CIO, and your CTO, and your partners, right? Understand what your current stack is and what their capabilities are current, and also if they have added functions that are now suddenly AI and generative AI that maybe weren't part of your assessment. So know where the guardrails are, know where the risks are, and then have explicit training on what people can and can't do. If you start with don't, they're going to anyway. So instead, if you say, hey, there's only these tools that are, air gapped to only be touching firm data where it's safe, or hey, never put client data of any kind in, like have specific guidance that people aren't just going rogue, going blind. And
Mm.
understand your jurisdiction, understand where the various companies you work with host data, whether it's going to trigger GDPR or any other sort of international data policy, data privacy issues. Um, and don't necessarily try to go it alone. Your partners may already have some experts who can come in and either help train and upskill your people or offer some guidance on some templates around what maybe should be in a general AI policy. And then rinse, repeat every 3, 6 months and reevaluate what's in your stack because 6 months ago, half of the main tools like the Lexis and Westlaw maybe didn't have a Gen AI chat function and now they do. I mean,
Yeah.
it's sort of there's no one checklist, but those would be my starting point to at least understand your universe of risk today and appropriate use for your teams. And don't use it will never really work, especially not now when it's so. I mean, my mom uses it for terrible knitting patterns. My little nephew's using it to understand how to do better stuff with Minecraft. It's become so pop culture. There's a South Park episode about AI and Gen AI, so clients are expecting it. Young associates through senior associates through partners and rainmakers are all using the tech, so you can't just say we didn't have a policy and run with that.
Just because somebody's using it doesn't mean they objectively know its capabilities and limitations.
Or it's
S-
risk. The
Yeah.
Avianca case, he watched 2 YouTube videos, and that was his training.
Yeah.
Now does that mean you have to build your own bespoke training? Not necessarily. That's why there are programs like Masters AI is gonna be one of them, but, there's different, industry organizations. Every bar association I know is doing CLEs and webinars about the risk and opportunity. And then work with your partners. Like, your partners probably have someone whose full-time job is advising on this. Don't listen to them blindly, but they may be able to help guide you or at least know where kind of some of the risks are.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I hope that's really helpful. And I want to pivot back, just like our careers, just
Yeah, keep
pivots
it fluid.
here. I do like a good sailing analogy, so we're just going to tack now. Let's talk about when your dream job becomes your nightmare. And like what are the signs for you, and how did you gather the courage to do something about realizing that situation?
Yeah, I touched on a little bit with, kinda talking about Gibson Dunn, but it was it was further back than that. It was when I started dreading going to the office, or when I was like, "Oh, I wanna do this, but I can't. I wanna do this, but I can't," and then
Mm.
realizing how much I missed that. And once I kind of got to that point where it was like, I was less happy than happy, and it wasn't just, a time-bound stressor. It wasn't, "Hey, we can add some headcount and this will change." It really was the structure of the job and what I was doing. I had to be honest with myself. It's really easy to have that sunk cost fallacy if I put in so much time to get here. Everyone else is telling me this is you should be so excited. You're at the top of the mountain. Go you. You almost have to be honest with yourself and admit I am an other person's dream job. It's not my dream job. And once I was honest about that, then I could start unpacking. Okay, well, what is my dream job? What is my unique superpower? What gives me joy? What fills my cup up? Is it? Because at the end of the day, we spend 40 to 80 hours a week doing our job for decades, sometimes spending more time doing that with our friends, with our family. So, is it worth keeping your head down for the pride of saying, "Oh, I got the brass ring. Everyone else is telling me it's great," or is it worth taking the risk of really analyzing what is your unique value proposition, what gives you joy? And don't get me wrong, I love my current job, and I still have days where I'm like, "Oh my god, this is awful." But if the trend line is more unhappy than happy, if the types of things that are giving me joy aren't permitted or aren't a component of my job, that's when you really have to start analyzing, and then trust your tribe. Like, talk with your people who have made a pivot, more people who know you really well. Like, "Hey, what's your vibe? What do you think about me? Have I changed? What are you seeing?" Like, sometimes it's as honest as having, like, someone else hold that mirror up for you, and then once you realize, "Okay, I'm unhappy," that's when you can start making a pivot to change that. Even for me, when I started the process of analyzing, well, what do I actually wanna do? That pressure on my chest started to lift because I was taking control back of my journey. And then as I talk with more people, as I refined what I wanna do, as I found a path forward, it wasn't flip the monopoly board and run away, I don't like it. It was, "Okay, this isn't working. I'm gonna take my steering wheel back and drive in the direction of something that will work." And once I did that little thing, even if it took 6 months or a year to get to my next stop where I was happy, that unhappiness and kind of suffocating feeling of the wrong job already started to lift. And frankly, once you start feeling like that lightening of the pressure on your chest, that's confirmation in of itself. Like, okay, I'm moving in the right direction.
Wow, I'm really grateful for your words because I felt all of those things, but I did not have your vocabulary to be able to put it into words. So I really hope that that can provide some useful vocabulary to work out for those that are listening that are thinking about, yeah, I've made it, but that whole concept of someone else's dream job, or because someone else could also be your past you
Mhm.
too. And our life stages, we change. That's what's so beautiful about being human. So thank you. And I guess this kind of feeds into the next question before we get into what I do on this show, which is
Ooh,
some beautiful conversation cards that
I love
are,
it.
hopefully we get an existential one. That'd be fun. And but before we do that, for the lawyers and the tech professionals who are feeling trapped, what's something concrete that they can do in the next 3 to 6 months to start to experiment to see if they feel that chest lifting as you were talking about.
The easiest thing I tell people to do is just make a square on a piece of notebook paper, and in the box have what I'm good at that I love, what I'm good at that I hate, what I'm not good at yet but I love and could invest in myself in, and what I'm not good at and I don't want to invest my time in. And then from that, look at where your job aligns up. If it mostly lines up, then maybe it's a little tweak that you make. If it's they're the two circles don't even intersect at all, that's when maybe you start looking at, okay, well, what sort of roles would map to what I've mapped out as things I enjoy doing that I'm good at? Are there skills that are missing, right? So when I wanted to make the move from being at the law firm to being more of an evangelist, it was like, all right, well, I need to re-engage my social network. I need to put myself back out there and create that platform again. So there was legwork I had to do in that box of
Mm,
I could be good at it. I just haven't been spending time on it. That might be, hey, I'm going to do some AI certifications. That might be, hey, I'm going to do some business classes. That might be, hey, I'm going to do any number of things, right? But look at where your current job aligns to what gives you joy and be honest. Like I would have said I'm really good at e-discovery if I wasn't being honest with myself. I don't love pressing the buttons. I love talking about it. I like making it, demystifying it for people. I like writing about it. And so part of it's kind of having that like fearless self-evaluation, which frankly, if you have a piece of paper, if you've got like a legal pad on your desk, do it now. Right. And you might be surprised. And then maybe don't do anything about it. Maybe if you're like, hey, it lines up great, but then reevaluate it. It's something that's tangible that has no cost to you, that is 30 minutes of your time, but forces you to start thinking about, proactively what type of role would I like? And then if there's gaps, you can start filling those gaps. Then it almost, instead of every single certification on the planet, you're like, okay, well, this skill would help me get the type of job I want. Why don't I spend the next 3, 6 months doing webinars on it or attending trainings on it or going to whatever the case may be, reading books about it. Like then, even if you're not to the point of talking with someone about getting a new job, you're doing a thing. It's tangible. It's in your control. So
That is your fractional sparkle,
it
dear
is.
listeners, the fearless self-reflection. All right. So we're going to watch
I
me
love it. I love it.
terribly,
Love it.
terribly shuffle these cards. You might hear them if you're listening on your preferred podcast here on your commute as you think about how you're going to fearlessly self-reflect using that quadrant method, which is really like seriously practical and what a great 3 month to 6 month plan as well. All right then. I'm going to pick another one because I want something a little bit more,
A little more edge. I'm okay with edge.
more edge. Yeah. Because you're not like usually this does make my guests a little bit nervous. And you're like, bring it on. Come on, let's go.
Honestly, the weirder the better. If it like I've done so many of these sort of things where it's like if I get surprised, I'm like, well done.
Yeah. And that's what I'm aiming for. But this is probably not it. But I do want to know your answer. What would your perfect weekend involve?
Ooh. Puppies, puzzle, and a walk on the beach. So, just something quiet and looking. Because for those who may or may not know me, like I'm on the road 229 days a year. I'm on the stage probably 60 times a year. And so I'm out there as an ambivert pretending I'm an extrovert. So for me, it's enjoying that calm moment, in a place that's a little bit different from home with my people, my puppies, and preferably a puzzle so I can kind of dissociate a little bit, turn the brain off a little bit.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, well, you definitely, I think you should consider next time you get a puzzle out. That could be a great post
Yeah.
as well, because I think it was in Idea Flow, the
Mm.
book Idea Flow, that they talk about doing things where you're not thinking about the problem, and then that's
100.
when the answer comes to you. And so, yeah, those quiet times, those walks on the beach, that puppy time. I can just totally see the TechnoCat going zing.
I
That's
mean,
your
no
next
joke.
best like big thing.
I came up with the entire new like structure and format of like TED Talks and games and interactive workshops while I was snowed in Bozeman with my puppies and not a crossword, a jigsaw puzzle in front of me. Because I was like, I would do a little bit like, oh, I've got this great idea. Like do a little bit, oh, I have this great idea. Like in a day, I was like, so I did 40 hours of work in, half the time, half paying attention while doing a puzzle because I got my brain to kind of work in parallel. So exactly. I love it.
Wonderful. And employers, pay attention. More puzzles in the office, please. Thank you so much, Kat, the TechnoCat. You have brought some fractional sparkle to my day and to our listeners' earballs. And thanks again to Novum Global for bringing us this episode.
Awesome.